Hello and welcome to Smart Money. Well, the Government of India has introduced several savings schemes for people from all age groups to provide them with sufficient financial support in times of need. Among them, two of the most popular and common savings schemes include the Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, which is a retirement benefit plan, and the Mahila Samman Savings Certificate Scheme, which is a small savings scheme aimed to promote financial inclusion for women and girls in India today. We try and understand these savings schemes in great detail. Mrin Agarwal, who is a financial educator and director of Finsafe India, joins us on the show as my guest. Mrin has been with us several times on Smart Money over the last many years, and she has put together great financial plans for us, for our viewers as well. So Mrin, thanks a lot for being with us on the channel today. I want to first start by understanding the interest in these, post office schemes, or the small savings schemes as we call it, right? The net collections under the small savings schemes has seen a growth of almost 50% compared to what we saw in the year ago in this current financial year. Can you tell us what are the reasons for this interest?
Hello, Sonia, and thank you for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to be on Smart Money. Well, I think there are a couple of reasons for it. One, of course, is the fact that the amount, so the two schemes that have got the most amount of money is the Mahila Samman Yojana and the Senior Citizen Savings Scheme. And I think the Senior Citizen Savings Scheme has got a lot of inflows because from 1st April, the amount that you could invest has been doubled from 15 lakhs to 30 lakhs. And of course, the PM Vaya Vandana Yojana scheme has been stopped, right? So because of the fact that one, the maximum limit was increased, and two, the interest rates are really attractive because you're getting 8.2%. Yes, it's a taxable interest, but for senior citizens, I think, that psychological level of getting anything above 8% is really good returns for them. So this is the main reason as to why there's been so much of inflow in both of these schemes.
Okay, so the Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, once again, is a sort of a retirement plan, right? And quite attractive, as you said, 8.2% returns. Of course, it is taxable, and there are more aggressive schemes that you can look at, like equities, etc. But this is a good and a safe scheme. So let's talk about this in more detail. Firstly, which schemes are offered? If you can just take us through the long list. You spoke about some of them, and then we'll get into the details of them one by one.
So in the small savings schemes, and if you see, for example, post office schemes, you have the monthly income scheme also, which competes, for regular investments. But if you look at the small savings schemes, it's basically the Public Provident Fund, the Sukanya Samriddhi scheme. And in the post office schemes, again, you do have NSC, KVP, and of course, the post office also offers Mahila Samman Yojana. So yeah, I mean, some of these are small savings schemes, some of these are basically post office schemes, right? So this is basically the list of schemes that are available for retail investors.
Okay, that's a long list that you can see on your screen about all the post office savings schemes and the small savings schemes, the options that are available. But tell us, Mrin, how would you rank these schemes on who they are useful for? Because, our audience varies from, say, an 18-year-old all the way to a 60-year-old. So which scheme is beneficial for which age group?
So first of all, the point to note always is that all of these schemes, other than pretty much PPF and Sukanya Samriddhi, are taxable, right? So I think, firstly, it does make sense for people in lower tax brackets. But of course, the Mahila Samman Yojana has been launched for women investors, and it's useful for saving for the short term, considering that it's a 2-year lock-in. Of course, schemes like PPF are clearly meant for saving for retirement corpus or any long-term goal that you might have, which could be 15 years and above. Senior citizens, as we talked about, is for getting a regular income and hence more for senior citizens. And of course, the Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, which has been launched, again, it is for girl child. You could use it to plan for your girl child's education, marriage, or just to build up a corpus for your girl child.
So then the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, of course, has a longer lock-in period, right? You can't exit the scheme before the girl child turns 18. So in that sense, don't you think it's a little bit of a disadvantage?
Well, the way the scheme works is that you have to start the scheme or open the account before the child turns 10 years of age. And the scheme actually matures 21 years from the date of opening. So if you open the account when the child was 5 years old, the scheme is actually going to mature when the child turns 26 or marriage, whichever is earlier. Now, at the age of 18, you can withdraw 50% of the accumulated corpus, right? And yeah, that way it is a bit restrictive because, again, if you're going to be opening this account when the child is 10, then you've had only 8 years really to compound, and you may not have been able to build that big a corpus. So to that extent, it can get a little restrictive.
Okay. The first scheme on your list, right, is deposits, which is a short-term savings scheme. So let's talk about that. Short-term options like deposits. How different are the rates if you compare it to, say, banks?
Well, I think, for the regular deposits, which is what I mean is that's for non-senior citizens, the rates are pretty similar. But then, of course, banks are offering a higher rate for senior citizens, and so I think it's like 6.9 for 1 year in the post office versus 7.5% in the banks. I think the other thing is that when you compare the bank deposits with the post office deposits, I think bank deposits turn out to be more flexible because you have different tenors over there. So you can choose like 270 days, or sometimes banks give attractive rates like for 400 days. And in terms of premature withdrawal, also, the post office deposits are a little restrictive because when you look at the premature withdrawal rules, right, in case if you withdraw within the first 1 year, then only you will get 4%. And if you withdraw after 1 year, then it's going to be 2% lower. Whereas when you go with the bank, then typically the penalty for premature withdrawal is between 0.5 to 1%, depending upon the time period in which you're actually doing the withdrawal.
Okay, let's move on now. Given that other than PPF, almost all the schemes are fully taxable, right, as you said, should one consider them for an investment? You did mention that people who are in the lower tax bracket, this is good for them because their taxable amount is not that high on an absolute basis. But, most of these schemes are fully taxable. So why should I consider them?
Well, it works really well for conservative investors who don't want to take any risk. And of course, they're getting a fixed return, people who want to go in for the fixed return, but then there's always a price to pay, right, for the fixed return, which is that you're going to get lower returns and may not really be able to beat inflation. So I would say, unless you want to be really conservative, honestly, I think a lot of the schemes may not work out because of the post-tax returns really not beating inflation.
Okay. So, while PPF is obviously meant for long-term goals, right, the Public Provident Fund, there are options which can give you better returns, although with some volatility. How do investors weigh in on this?
So I think, first thing is that I don't think that our intent is to say that we are comparing a fixed return product like PPF with a market linked product like equities. So that's not the intent out here. But I think what is very important to note is that, when you are really planning for a 15-year investment, or, in the case of PPF, for example, as many viewers might be knowing that it's a 15-year investment, which can be extended in blocks of 5 years further. So, you could even hold the investment for a 30-year period. And I think, PPF, when one looks at the investment per se, it's a great investment because it gives you a tax-free, risk-free return, right? It's a guaranteed return by the government. But again, as I said, there's a price to pay for getting all those benefits, and the fact over there remains that the return that you make is about 7%, which in itself is not bad because it's 7% tax-free, right? So just to give an idea to the viewers, right? So let's say you're putting 1.5 lakhs every year at this 7.1% for the next 15 years. This amount will grow to about 40 lakhs. And let's say you're doing this for the next 30 years, the amount actually grows to 1.5 crores. So I think in terms of, an option to look at building a corpus for the long term, it is a good option. But you must remember that the returns are limited and it is barely beating inflation, right? And that is where, without really comparing debt and equity as asset classes, you might have to look at, if it is possible for an investor to actually take some amount of risk, then they possibly should also consider investing into equities, right? And so again, I would just like to reiterate that the decision to choose PPF versus the other investment is completely based on your risk taking ability. But I do find, Sonia, that a lot of times people just put money blindly in PPF, saying, oh, this is a great safe investment, so let's just put money here. And the reality is that today, and we've seen a lot of data coming out where it clearly shows that people have less than 10% invested in market linked instruments, and they actually have 90% of portfolio invested in fixed return instruments, right? So that is where, while on its own, PPF is a great investment. And again, I'd like to reiterate that I'm not comparing debt and equity as an asset class, but somewhere you have to really think about it, that do you want to add another instrument, another fixed return instrument, or do you want to add something which, of course, will have more volatility, will not give you guaranteed return, but has the ability to give you maybe 1 to 3 times more return than what you can get in the PPF?
Absolutely. So just want to, go through this, right? This is how the chart is looking for us. If you invest 1.5 lakhs per year and your interest rate is about 7.1%, in 30 years, you'll have 1.5 crores straight in your, in your corpus, and 15-year returns is 40 lakhs. It is tax-free. It is a fixed return that you get, but as Mrin was also pointing out, it barely beats inflation. So yes, keep a little bit of your money in the PPF account, but also look at some slightly riskier, asset classes like equities. Got that? The one question that I recently got is that if I have invested in a PPF, Mrin, should I also look at the NPS, the National Pension Scheme? What are your thoughts on that? Between PPF and NPS, if you had to choose one, which one would it be?
Oh, I would choose NPS any day. And the reason is that in the NPS, I'm getting a market linked return. I have the ability to take equity exposure, which is going to really help me compound my returns. So, clearly I would go in for the NPS.
Okay, all right. So NPS over PPF any day, but PPF also, it is a risk-free, tax-free, stable return investment, but of course doesn't beat inflation. So it has its pros and cons. Let's do one thing. Let's slip into a short break. Mrin, stay on with us. We'll come back to you in a bit, and we'll also continue to discuss all the different options that you have in the small savings schemes. Welcome back to Smart Money on CNBC-TV18. Our guest today is Mrin Agarwal. She's a financial educator. She also runs Finsafe, and we're talking about a lot of the the interest that we're seeing in small savings schemes, basically the post office schemes. Mrin, before the break, we were talking about different schemes for women, right? For women empowerment, for women to be financially literate, for girl children as well. There's a Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, which I want to talk about. It is a 21-year investment, so there's a big lock-in period. And going by historical data, in what condition should investors choose Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana over other products for their girl child?
So again, like in the case of PPF, we of course talked about some of the restrictive withdrawal rules for Sukanya Samriddhi. And honestly, I mean, these do work for the scheme, because it's only when you have these sort of lock-ins that the scheme is actually going to work for you, right? I mean, if you allow withdrawals, then people tend to withdraw it. So, but again, what I would say is that today, I have always looked upon Sukanya Samriddhi. I've got 2 daughters, and I have used Sukanya Samriddhi for, saving for them as well. But what I would say is that just having money in Sukanya Samriddhi itself is not enough. And given the cost of education, especially if you're looking at it from education, or even the cost of marriage these days, and the inflation on both of these things, I think what is really important is that we need to complement this scheme along with equity. Now, Sukanya Samriddhi again is a great scheme because it's triple E, so it's exempt, which means exempt at investment, exempt on the interest, and exempt on maturity. And again, it's giving you a 8% return. Of course, the returns are declared on a quarterly basis, but a 8% tax-free return kind of translates to about 11% return. So it's a pre-tax return. So it's a great investment as such. But I would say that it's a good idea to complement it with an equity investment, given the fact that inflation on education is more than 10%.
Okay, so I just want to get that graph up on the screen, the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, and how you can benefit from it. The amount that you invest is up to 1.5 lakhs a year. The interest rate is flat 8%. An 8-year return is about 17 lakhs, and a 12-year return is 30 lakhs. And this is, of course, particularly for your girl child. So if you have a girl child, this is a great plan for you. But as Mrin was also saying, since you start investing for your children from a very, very young age, they have a larger risk appetite and a longer time horizon, so they can really benefit from the power of compounding. Hence, along with Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, it makes sense to put some amount in equities as well. But Mrin, what are the advantages as well as disadvantages of the regular return schemes like the SCSS, the Post Office MIS? How do these compare with, an SWP in sort of a debt fund? I mean, just to compare these schemes with a debt fund.
Yeah, so for senior citizens, these are the three options that you have. You can do senior citizen savings schemes, you can do Post Office MIS, which are going to give you fixed returns, or you can do a SWP in a debt fund, right? Now, while these schemes, the fixed return schemes are extremely safe and they give you a fixed return, so you have visibility of returns. And the other advantage in SCSS is also the fact that, the rate doesn't change. So unlike PPF and Sukanya Samriddhi, where the rates are changing on a quarterly basis, the rates are not changing. And it's currently 8.2% paid quarterly. Of course, the Post Office MIS is lower. It's at 7.4% and it's paid on a monthly basis. Plus, you're able to, between both the schemes as husband and wife, you can actually invest around 69 lakhs. So I think it's a good amount that can be invested over there. And it also, the SCSS also qualifies for ATC deduction. I think the disadvantage, of course, is the fact that it's taxable. And, as we know, for senior citizens above 50,000 rupees interest, the TDS is going to kick in. So certainly, on a 30 lakh investment with interest being around 2,46,000, it's going to be entirely taxable for the individual. Also, rates may not keep pace with the inflation. And the fact is that as far as the senior citizen savings scheme is concerned, only people above 60 or people above 55 who've taken VRS can invest in this scheme. And hence, so if you're retiring at 50, this is not an option for you. And again, there is a lock-in and there is a quite a steep, I think, withdrawal penalty, because the withdrawal penalty is on the invested amount and not on the interest. So I think, these are some of the disadvantages on the senior citizen savings scheme. Now, how does the SWP rank with this? Well, I would actually say that I would actually first say that for any individual, try to maximize the senior citizens and the POMIS, and then go for the SWP, because the taxation of all three is the same. But, the SCSS has visibility of returns, which the SWP obviously is going to give you a debt market link return. So there is going to be volatility out there.
Okay, so if you want to evaluate the place a post office scheme has in your portfolio, suppose I'm in this, age group of say 35 to 40, right? And I'm starting off my investments. You spoke about all the post office schemes. Tell me, how do I allocate my money? Say I have 100 rupees. How much should I allocate to these schemes? How much should I put in debt? How much should I put in equity?
See, what I would say is, of course, that's dependent on your goals. And if you do have long-term goals, I would say the two schemes I would look at would be only PPF and SSY. And that is because they have tax efficiency. I wouldn't really look at any of the other schemes that are there. And again, the allocation would be based on what is your debt equity allocation. Clearly, I mean, these are going to come as part of your debt allocation. And as I said, that I think, SSY is particularly a very, very good scheme, given the fact that the pre-tax returns are somewhere in the range of about 11%. At present, I think SSY certainly is a very, very good option.
Okay, that is the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, right? All right. Mrin, thanks a lot for joining in. Very helpful discussion here. Thanks and have a great weekend. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Smart Money. Keep writing to us. We love receiving feedback from you. Have a great weekend. We'll be back bright and early on Monday.